Hello memory munchers. Well, if you've seen my recent videos, I've been refurbishing this 1986 Apple Macintosh Plus and trying to get it working. And there's actually a very nostalgic reason that I haven't shared yet of why I want to get it up and running. We'll explore that fully in the next Quick Bites episode, but for now it's time to draw, hint hint, the repair to a close one way or another. Though I think I'll stop short of turning it into a Macquarium, hopefully. Although we do love fish and chips here. But speaking of fresh fish, it's a fresh month, so how about some fresh opening titles? Welcome to Freshro Freshy Peas.
Welcome.
So for our repair endeavours, we've tried 3 floppy disk drives now, 4 system disks, and 2 cables. So it's clearly not the disk drives. So let's turn our attention to the logic board and analog board instead. So this is the logic board, and as you can see there's a lot of corrosion on the external floppy disk drive port, but I am reliably informed that that won't affect the working of the internal floppy disk drive. And speaking of those 3 floppy drives, as they say, if at first you don't succeed, skydiving probably isn't for you. But also if at first, second and third disk drive you don't succeed, don't try again. So instead I'm giving this board a nice clean up. And immediately we found one of the bugs. Put that on Felipe. Alright, I'm going to saturate this board in alcohol. That would have got that bug very drunk. And give it a good clean up with the anti-static brush. Because on the forums they say that actually a lot of issues can be fixed by cleaning the board. You might dislodge a stray piece of solder or something that was bridging a connection that shouldn't have. I do want to try to clean up this corroded port though, although I can see that it has eaten into the metal. It's incredible, no matter how many times I keep scrubbing this, rust keeps coming off it. Well, it's not perfect, but it's certainly better than it was before. This looked like it came off the Titanic. I think this machine was actually around when that was sailing. Alright, and the RF shield here is also very corroded. I'm just going to clean it up for cosmetic purposes, but we're not going to be able to salvage this shield. You can see the corrosion has actually eaten into the metal. Yikes. Or maybe it was that little bug. Little bugger. Well, let's try this out and see if our cleanup has worked. Machine still works, that's a good sign. And now the big problem that we've been having, let's try putting in a floppy disk and see if the logic board can read it now. Yeah, and no. Well, moving on a couple of days, and Puppyfractic's had herself a little operation. Girl stuff. But she's chosen as her recovery pillow my set of capacitors here. And, oh wait, she's not a husky. Because what we want to try next is recapping the analog board. You see, those capacitors can burn out and even start to leak over time, and that could cause a voltage fluctuation that means the floppy drive isn't getting all the 12 volts that it needs. And my friend, the 9-bit guy, to the rescue. He sent me this very handy spreadsheet that he's made that shows all the modern day replacement parts we'll need. Now, I actually had a lot of these in stock, but the ones I didn't, I ordered from DigiKey using his model numbers. So let's get to work in replacing all the capacitors. Zip. Most of them are hot snotted in, so don't worry, I'm not actually pulling away from the pads, that would be dangerous. I'm just pulling it away from the snot of the gods. Hot glue. That's actually my new song. And it is incredible with the march of technology how much smaller these equivalent capacitors have become. And this one is well and truly attached, which means there's only one thing for it. And this apparently is the replacement part. And I don't think we need any heat shrink protection there. It's not going to touch anything else. Alright, fingers crossed. No. Bit of a letdown. Well, we can also recap the logic board. Less likely to cause an issue, but I did find some of the caps did look a little bulgy. Also, although these are axial, I only have radial capacitors. You can see I've already replaced one there. But we'll keep going and see if this makes any difference. Right, let's do this. Come on, come on. Oh, come on. Well, next on my list is the Bourne's filter. Now, these are basically filters that are a bank of resistors that look like a chip. And apparently, if one of them is faulty, it can actually stop the floppy drive working. And to test it, you can simply remove the chip completely. It will stop the external port working, but the internal floppy drive should still function, or should function better if it was the problem. You can see here how that resistor bank inside differs from a normal chip. And because at some point I'll be putting a new chip back in here, I'm going to place a socket in its place. Only I don't have any the right size, so that sound is me cutting one down. Oops. Alright, that will do for now. Let's go try it out. Come on, Bourne. Oh, Bourne. Well, our next suspect is the Iwm Chip, and as we all know, Iwm stands for Integrated Was Machine. As it happens, I have a spare socketed Iwm lurking in this old Macintosh SE, so let's give Was a transplant. Hopefully not the real Was, if he lays off the chips at Fry's. You see, Steve Wozniak was unhappy with the cost and performance of 3.5-inch disk drives, so he developed his own controller, which ultimately bumped the number of sectors on a track from 8 up to 16. Apple built this into one IC and called it the Iwm, Integrated Was Machine. And unsurprisingly, this could be the cause of our floppy issues. you know what time it is. Come on, baby, you can do this. You can't do this. Great. Well, excuse me, but there are a couple other things I want to do. First thing is testing all the continuity from the pins of the IWM, and secondly is removing the SUBSCYRIBE chip, because I'm not using the SUBSCYRIBE interface and it can actually interfere with the floppy drive. We can just pop it out and see if things get better. That means it's disk time. Come on. Please load. Please go away. Well, we've run the entire matrix of fixes, and it may be time to face the truth. The machine just may be beyond repair. Well, that means we can treat ourselves. This is the big mess of wires, but honestly I think its creator, Steve Chamberlain, is being a bit hard on himself. I don't think it looks messy at all. It even comes with this Perspex case. And in case you didn't guess, it's a floppy emulator. It's going to allow us to run any floppy disk off that micro SD card. I just pray it works. Put that on Craigslist. And whether it works will depend on whether the external port held up okay to my restoration. And I'm going to put tape over these holes so that we can hold the light pipes and the buttons when we turn it upside down to place the lid on. Like that. What a beautiful little addition. And you know, if you ever want to get into creating things like this, I recommend PCBWay! It's their 5th birthday coming up soon, and they have a 50% off deal, because as we all know, PCB stands for Proud Chinese Birthday. So first thing I'm going to do is upgrade the firmware to the Macintosh Plus version. Self-test, okay. And let's try it out. Okay, so now we have to insert a virtual disk. And I'll choose a relatively early system disk. And let's put it in. Boop. Oh, yes! Welcome to Macintosh. Ah, that is the first time I've ever seen this Macintosh Plus boot. Ah, I was about to give it the boot. Well, let's see what we've got here. This was my favorite app back in the day. It just seemed incredible that you could get these little cute widgets. And speaking of incredible, while we're looking at the front of this machine, you might recall that this was the star of the episode where I discussed an old but lesser known de-yellowing technique dubbed light brighting. On the right here you can see how it looked 2 months ago when I actually finished filming, putting it under a total of 24 hours mild sunlight with no bleach. But if you watched that episode, you'll also know that my words of caution did include this. So what about downsides? Well, Dr. Pickett, he did some research, and that research indicates that the yellowing might return. But the yellowing that might return can be prevented, apparently, with exposure to blue light. It doesn't cause brittleness as fast as the traditional retrobrighting method might. But as you can see, neither this or in fact any of my test machines are re-yellowing, and certainly there's no brittleness after 24 hours sunlight. After all, sun can only penetrate the top 33 microns of the plastic, less than a human hair's width. But none of this seems quite as hair-raising or puzzling when you see comments like this. All I can say is this machine now looks and finally works better than before. Ah. Alright, just move the camera tripod for a closing shot. What is it? All I did was bump the desk. You stupid f***ing piece of shit. Well, don't fear. This is actually an extremely common problem with these machines. A very, very common problem indeed. It's dry solder joints. And yep, I opened it up and look at that. Never seen a crack that big. Wait, let me rephrase that. Forget it. And I'm pretty sure that's going to work. So with that done, it's time to tidy up the desk. And the benefit of that floppy emulator is we can now run any disk we want, which means we won't need those anymore. And finally put this machine back together once again. Oh, that could have gone horribly wrong. That really is old meets new. That corroded port is now completely covered by the shiny new plug. And let's set it up in pride of place at the end of the studio desk. Speaking of new plugs, let's give the keyboard a new cable, because the old one was disgusting. Nice. The moment of truth. Welcome to Macintosh. Again. Oh, forgot one thing. Product placement. And here's a reminder of how our non-working machine used to look. And here it is now, our lovely looking, lovely working Macintosh Plus, plus floppy emulator. But make sure you're subscribed and bell ring it so you can see what I wanted to do with this machine all along. A sort of recreating of some childhood data, just as it was when I was 13. More on that in the next Quick Bites episode, but for now, are you glad we went back to Mac? Or wasn't it worth floppy jack? Comment below and cheerio.